Welcome to the Observe Day podcast, the show where we celebrate the days that matter. From holidays to meaningful observances, we bring you inspiring conversations, stories, and ideas to make each day count. Whether it's raising awareness, learning something new, or simply sparking joy, this is your space to explore the calendar in a whole new way. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I'm excited to share today's observance with you. Let's dive in. Today on the Observe Day podcast, in celebration of National Reading New Book Month, we're joined by Laura Stanfill, a publisher, novelist, and the author of the upcoming book, Imagine a Doll. Laura is the founder of First Avenue Press, an award-winning small press known for uplifting, unique voices and powerful stories. Since 2012, she has helped countless writers find their way into print while also teaching resilience, creativity, and the power of literary community. In this episode, we'll explore how reading a new book can transform lives, why discovering new authors matters, and what goes on behind the scenes in publishing. Welcome to the podcast, Laura.
Thanks so much for having me, Wisdom.
Yeah. Why do you think National Reading New Book Month is such an important holiday to celebrate?
I think that so often as adults, we consider reading as frivolous or extra to our lives. And so National Read a Book Month is a time to celebrate what sitting down and spending time with other people's ideas, words, insights, and beliefs can mean to a person.
Yeah. Wow. From your perspective as a publisher, what happens when a reader takes a chance on a new book or author?
From my perspective as a publisher, it's my favorite part of the industry and being a publisher is when a book I love finds its way into the hands of someone who doesn't expect what's there. I love to surprise readers. I love to delight readers. I love to bring them a sense of joy, information that they've never seen before, stories and voices they've never seen before or thought to read before, because for one thing, it's fun. It's delightful to read a book that makes you happy or makes you think. And also, reading promotes empathy and grows our understanding of the world and people in the world.
Yeah. Well, can you share with me a personal story about a book that changed your life or perspective in an unexpected way?
Well, I loved, I guess I will say 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Yeah. Wow.
Reading that for the first time, acknowledging and understanding that people could write like that. He breaks so many rules that I had learned in school. I found him in college, and the ability to weave magic in with everyday lives and to build a narrative based on multiple voices just really astonished me and eventually empowered me as a writer to write books that are not only from one person's point of view, but that are about the community. And I think that's one of the things he does so well that really made an impact on me.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that book. Well, a lot of readers they wonder how a book goes from idea to bookstore shelves. Could you walk us through the journey?
Sure. The first piece, and a lot of writers get caught up on this, is finding their way to a publisher. There are two main ways. One of them is submitting to small independent presses like Forest Avenue. The other way is to look for an agent who represents the book to editors and publishers at bigger publishing houses. So whichever way, though, the writer has to come up with a way to describe their book and sell it in a few words in a query letter. And then once they get representation and the agent sells the book, or once they submit to the small press that falls in love with their story and their voice, then the next big step is an editorial one. It's called developmental editing. Developmental editing is the big picture arc, like how do the story pieces fit together and what do the characters do? How do they move through the story? It's the big picture. And so after developmental edits are done and the author works really hard to update the manuscript, then it goes into copy edits and eventually proofreading and layout and design. Throughout the process, we are also constantly thinking about audience. What cover will get the right readers to find this book and go, ooh, I have to read it? What language on the back of the book will do the story justice? After all, we have a paragraph or maybe 2 paragraphs, and a lot of our novels that we published are 300, 400 pages. So how do you distill the brilliance of a writer down into a small bit of material that would get somebody to read the book? So, and then from there, after all the editing is done, it really is all about working with the author to build up their confidence and getting reviews and getting them on podcasts, doing interviews, helping them write essays and submit those to help get the word out about the book.
Before we dive deeper, I'd love to invite you to join the Observe Day newsletter. Every week, I send you highlights of upcoming observances, creative ways to celebrate, and behind-the-scenes extras from the shows. It's the perfect way to stay inspired and never miss a meaningful moment. Sign up today at observeday.com/join. That is observeday.com/join. Now, let's get back to the conversation. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for just laying this, all the behind-the-scenes before us. Wow. So
Sure.
a lot of persons will know how a book gets formed. Wow. For new readers, how important are small presses like First Avenue in bringing diverse voices into the world?
I think they're so important. I have time and time again found my writers, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, telling me stories about bigger presses or agents who didn't understand or didn't acknowledge the power of the story they were trying to tell as being essential and necessary to the world. And a lot of the time, those rejections came across as racist or well-meaning but missing the mark. I would say the same thing about, I have a lot of authors whose brains work differently than other people's. I have a lot of disabled authors as well. And a lot of the time when you're telling a story from a perspective that is really specific and particular, it's easy for an editor and agent to say, oh, I've never heard anything like this before, or this is not a traditional narrative, or I don't know anybody with this name, the same name as the character, so therefore it's not my book. People who are reading books at a fast pace, trying to get through a lot of material, may miss some really amazing, important work. So that's where we come in, small presses. We're always looking for those stories that haven't been told before.
Yeah, since we're talking about small presses, what's the role of indie bookstores in encouraging people to discover new titles during months like this?
Indie bookstores are my absolute favorite. I love everyone who decides to grow up and become a bookseller because they're interested in sharing work and sharing words. It's at a time like this with a reading month or even a particular holiday, sometimes holiday gifts or even holidays like Mother's Day or, back to school, people get excited about coming in to buy books. And independent bookstores and their staff members do such a great job of knowing what's out there, but also not just the biggest things. I mean, they stock the biggest things, but they all read so widely and sometimes beyond their genres. Together, they can tell you so much about what's on the shelf and put you in directions you would not go on your own if you didn't have a staff member guiding you.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. At the beginning of the intro, I mentioned your book, Imaginator. And your book is a guide for writers. How do you encourage authors to think about future readers?
Encouraging writers is the whole point of what I do, I think, as a writer and a publisher. One of the things that feels really big and scary about putting on your writer hat and going to be a writer in the world is rejection. When you want somebody to read your work, they could say no. If you submit your work to a literary journal or a publishing house or an agent, they could take a peek and say no. So my number one focus for writers is to nurture that creative flame and to center themselves on the stories that they are born to tell, the stories, the things they've survived, the places they've lived, the people they've known, who they used to be, who they are now. All of those pieces of self funnel onto the page and help writers create a piece of work that nobody else could have possibly created. And I think we need to acknowledge the magic of that process, aside from whatever happens to the work that's been written afterwards. But doing the work of writing and doing the work of reading. I mean, National Read a Book Month is fantastic because it focuses people on books, but especially for those of us who want to write and publish our work, reading other people's work is like the fuel. It sustains you. It surprises you in ways that make you think differently, and eventually might make your work richer for having experienced other people's voices.
Yeah. And eventually it makes your work richer just because you've experienced other people's voices.
Yeah. I think in the old days, people used to tell writers to study the style of a writer you really love and then figure out how they do it. And I think that's still, I don't know if that's advice people give anymore. And I don't know how I feel about that advice, but I do think that reading widely, especially within the genre you want to write, and then also outside that genre, and see what moves you as a reader, see what attracts you. Go to the bookstore, look at book covers and different sections and see where your heart is drawn, where your eye is drawn, what makes you curious. And that is such a good way to propel yourself on your own writing journey, is by engaging with other people's work. After all, someday you want your book to be read. So let's read everybody else's now, or as many as we can. I'm always reading something.
Okay. Well, what advice would you give to someone who wants to read more new books, but feels overwhelmed by choices? There's so many books out there.
Well, I would start with your local independent bookstore. You can go in and ask the staff or see what the staff picks are. I always love looking at those, what they call shelf talkers. It's the little piece of text that somebody's handwritten underneath a book that the staff really likes. That's always a great way to find a next book. Other than that, I would say let your heart and your inner child play with your choices of reading. Sometimes I do feel obligated to read something and the joy kind of gets sucked out of it. But if you go into the idea of reading as a type of play, a type of creative recess, instead of a course you have to take or something you have to intentionally, seriously focus on. That'll help you get back to loving reading like you did as a kid, like many of us did as a kid. Instead of trying to feel like I should read this because everyone else is reading, think about, there's a dragon on that cover, or oh yeah, I really wondered about the history of the common bean, whatever.
For someone like you who's a publisher, most of what you do is read books. And for me, I'm curious because earlier you just mentioned that you have to be careful not to read books because everyone else is reading it. But you have to read. There are a lot of books you just have to read, not because it's not because you're like, oh yeah, I should read this book. It's more like, you have to read the book. I mean that the book might not be enjoyable, but what's it like? Does it get boring at a point in time that it feels like work? And how do you reconnect to say, okay, let me actually read books that I want to read, I love to read, rather than, oh yeah, this is just one of the tasks I need to do for my role as a publisher?
So what's exciting about being a book publisher is I get to choose the manuscripts we acquire. And so if I'm reading somebody's book, somebody's manuscript before it's been published, and it doesn't hit my sweet spot, it's not making me curious to keep reading, I know it's probably not for me as a publisher. So I approach my reading in the same way. I definitely am reading some books that I feel like I ought to read. And what gets me out of my comfort zone as a reader most often are local writers. I really like to support other people in my local community. And so I will read whatever they write. I'll read poetry, I'll read thrillers, mysteries, post-apocalyptic novels, because I know the person who wrote them and I want to celebrate them. And so for me there, it's not so much of a chore or oh gee, I should read this, but a delight in and an honoring of the writers and of their process that they got their book into the world. And then for my other reading, when I'm not doing that, I choose based on what sounds good to me. And I've been reading a lot of happy books lately, or otherworldly fantasy books. I want to find some joy right now in everything I read. I think because times are hard. And if I can find a book that will bring me joy as part of the plot, that makes me happy.
Yeah. If I can find a book that gives me joy as part of the plot, that makes it happy. So what happens is for most of the times where you can't find a book that gives you joy as part of the plot, what happens in those times?
When we can't find a book
that gives you joy in the plot.
Yeah. I mean, I read anyway. I just read a book that's an older novel, and it was about the building of the atomic bomb. And I thought, wow, this is not a joyful topic. But the story was about a woman and her life, and it has ups and downs. And so it wasn't as much joyful, but it was intensely interesting. And so I kept reading and I finished the book and I really liked it. It was called The Atomic Weight of Love. And I'm really glad I read it. It's not something I would have picked out necessarily, but the hard stuff, the sadness and the societal commentary matched up with things I've been thinking and feeling. And so in that way, it felt really good to read.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. I did prepare a lightning round for the end of the episode. It's just a couple of questions. You ready?
Great.
The last new book you read and loved?
I am not quite at the end of it, but I'm reading The Ministry of Time right now, and it's excellent.
Hardcover, paperback, or ebook? What's your favorite way to read?
Hardback, followed by paperback.
Okay. A book you think everyone should read at least once in their lifetime?
Sylvester and the Magic Pebble by William Steig. It is a children's book.
Okay. One sentence of advice for someone who wants to write a book but hasn't started.
Put your pen on the paper or put your fingers on the keys and know that you do not have to start at the beginning. You can start anywhere.
Okay, thank you for that. If you could step into the world of any book for a day, which would it be?
Oh, goodness, that's really hard. I think I would want to step into the mystery that I'm publishing at Forest Avenue in the fall. It's called Who Killed Won the Gun? And it's a time loop murder mystery. So the idea of getting to visit a time loop for one day and see one small piece of it, knowing that it would repeat another day, I think that would be really fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Laura. You did incredibly well.
Thank you so much, Wisdom.
Yeah, where can listeners learn more about what you do and connect with you?
ForestAvenuePress.com is my website. That's probably the best.
Okay, ForestAvenuePress.com. I'll put the link in the show notes and in the description, so listeners can just click and go directly to the site. Thank you so much for this interview. That's it for today's episode of the Observe Day podcast. Thank you for spending your time with us as we explore today's observance. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend who'd love to celebrate life's special days too. Don't forget to join the newsletter at observeday.com/join for more observant stories, tips, and updates. Until next time, keep finding meaning in every day.